Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. As you can see, my good friend Mark Ostrander is with us, and GT is en route to Serbia. If you follow him on social, you see all of his pictures as he's getting on airplanes and leaving airports and wearing Nike stuff. So we wish Grant the safest of travels. I have talked to him, Mark. I know we both have. I think we're going to try to figure out next week to do this, even if it's briefly, where he jumps on with us live from the event or from Serbia. So I think you and me, I shouldn't say this. I think I take Grant for granted sometimes. Like he's our friend. He's a very approachable person, but he swims in the deep waters, man. It's nice to have him on the team.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Hey, David, I did something yesterday. I went to Omaha and I met up with three of my college buddies. That I got with in college. Have not seen these guys for 35 years. And we played around the golf. And, after the first few minutes of not knowing what they look like, obviously, because everybody changes, I walked by these two guys and I said, hey. I said, what's up? They had no idea it was me. I had no idea it was them. I'm getting text messages. I thought you said you were here. I go, I'm on the putting green. They walk over. You just walk by us. And, once you see them and start talking to them and see their hand expressions and stuff, that is pretty funny. But it's funny how things don't change, too, because when you're on the golf course with some of these guys, same reactions they had when they were 21, 22 years old, hitting bad shots here and throwing their clubs and saying, I suck at this game. And it was a lot of fun seeing them, though. So if anybody's at home and haven't seen somebody for a real long time, they used to do something, hook up, make the time and the effort to do it because it's well worth seeing people you haven't seen in a long time. So,
yeah, man, it's chicken soup for the soul. Those I'm lucky. I get to travel a lot and, like know people all over the country just from the course of wrestling and our lives diverging, but like for me, whenever I go to Iowa, I know I'm going to see you in GT. Like whenever I go to Arizona, I know I'm going to see a Lee Pritz. Like whenever I go to Oklahoma, it's going to be a Hardell Moore and those multiple people down there, Alex Steen, Brian Picklow, etc. But the other people that you don't stay in touch with as often, it's awesome. Like I put a social media post out yesterday for the UFC fight Saturday, the Chimaev Diaz pay-per-view. I got it via a table down at this ballpark village where we ran the fantasy contest, and people are hitting me up, guys I haven't seen in years, like, Coach, I'm gonna come down and watch the fights with you. Like, it's awesome. It really is awesome. And it is funny how you get right back into a rhythm, with people, like teasing them and stuff like that. One of the highlights of my summer, I know it has to be for you even more so, was your son's wedding and just hanging out and playing golf with you and your brother, the rehearsal dinner, whatever you want to call that, which was awesome, but super casual, low key, everybody hanging out, telling stories. And, wrestling's sort of a universal language, and I guess another part of that is, our fantasy football league drafted, and you are the two-time defending champion. And there are several Ostranders, Fort Dodgers in there. And so you drafted from the 2-hole. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but how do you like your team? And
it's something I'm going to have to coach up, David, obviously. That's kind of how we do.
That's what you do. That's what you do.
I'll call these guys in if I have to, and we'll have a little meeting and, figure out what's going on with them. I don't do a lot of trading during the year. If you know that, I kind of stay with the team I have and try to work around that. My one son, Thomas, so I really don't get it yet. I haven't really talked to him in depth about it, but I think there's a little auto draft going on because he ended up with 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends. And
I didn't see it. 3 tight ends too.
His brother, Ben, who's also in it, is still laughing about having 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends on his team. So, it's a lot of fun. Tanner Utley has an okay team, another 4 Dodge guys. So there's 4 of us, kind of against the rest of the world down south, obviously, with all your buddies that you got in it. So,
yeah, but it's all wrestling people pretty much. One of my buddies who does jujitsu is in it. Joey Benefiel from Chicago is in it. Cecil Severato, who's Savion's dad. I'm trying to think who else. Chad Lindsley from Oklahoma. I think he's in Nebraska now. I met him through Perry. Christian Thompson from fantasygrade.com. Yep. Now I got to look to make sure I don't miss anybody. Hold on.
Mario.
Yeah, he's my jiu-jitsu guy.
All right.
Jason and Kale Keck.
Yep. We've had Jason on the podcast many times.
Yeah. Christian, Cecil, Jason, your son, Mario, Tanner, Joey. I think we got everybody. So it's fun. Like, we don't play for enough money that the people get feelings hurt. And that's, a couple guys asked me about playing for more money, and I'd rather just play for bragging rights. I mean, I would love to get in a high stakes league with like somebody like you or one of the other guys, like play a team together against guys I don't know, because that way if you win, you don't feel bad, like. So you did one last thing. You took Eckler at 2 and left me with McCaffrey at 3. And in our league, the money's super top heavy, so it's like you got to go for first. But I was actually hoping you'd take McCaffrey. So,
well, David, you picked a couple guys I wanted to on the way back, so I'd say we're pretty even. Another shout out to my son Ben, who's should be there by now. David, have you ever heard of anybody going to Bulgaria to play golf? I haven't.
No, but Ben, of all the people I know, would be in the top 10 list. He and I have talked about some of the places I got to play when I was his age, traveling, winning contests, and I got to play Pinehurst, 5 of the 8 courses, got to play all 3 courses at Pebble Beach, got to play Kaanapali, got to play Kapalua. Those are sort of bucket list things, like I'm going to go to Vegas next month and I'm going to play with my buddy out there. Shout out to Eric Moxley. He lives his neighbors are Gruden and Derek Carr. So he belongs to a country club out there. But we're talking about maybe getting on that Wynn golf course. So, something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of, golf is, golf sort of, the analogy I heard somebody say once is like golf is a lot better as far as with friends than tennis, because tennis, I'm facing you and one of us has to win and so one of us has to lose. In golf, you're really kind of playing the course. Like if you are a better golfer than me. So if I make a par, you making a birdie doesn't really affect how happy I am about my par. Where in tennis, we can't both win the point. One of us has to lose, and we have to lose to the other one. So it's a much better game socially. And as you get older, it's a lot easier on your body. So not as much running. All right, we're going to focus primarily on Worlds the next 2 weeks. So you and I were talking about this yesterday. Worlds start this weekend, and let's lay a couple things out for people. And I learned about this from Justin Tritz at Track. The host country always decides the order, but women's wrestling is always in the middle. So it either goes Greco, women's, men's freestyle, or vice versa. Okay. So this year it's Greco first, men's freestyle third. A couple of last minute changes on the Greco team. Filkey is out. Sammy Jones is in. Provisor is out. Spencer Woods is in. Our Greco team is really young. We already had Hancock jump out and Braxton Amos jump in. Schultz is on the team. We have 2 current college athletes. The Greco program is obviously in the middle of a transition, right? Ivan is in. They haven't named a head coach yet. Linlin is out. So I think expectations are tempered, but I will tell you, like a Greco medal, like when somebody does well in Greco, it's really exciting for not only the country, but the people at USA Wrestling. When I got a chance to talk to Gary Abbott after I got out of COVID last year about Hancock, or about all the, one of his first people he brought up was Hancock, placing, like how big that is for the program. So there is a chance here for somebody to sort of be the flag bearer and step up and do some things that are, that are not as common in women's and in men's freestyle. So, hoping that those guys do really well. The reason why we bring Greco up go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing because I'm notorious for this. I've in the past, and I didn't know Grant at that time very well. So in the past, I always thought our Greco team was not very good. What I have learned over the last few years, David, is that our Greco team's actually really good for Americans. These guys are elite athletes. I mean, these are some of the best that we have on our team. The issue that we have in the United States is we don't focus on Greco. So it's a whole different problem for our Greco guys because they don't do this from age 5 up to age 25 and then start competing in the worlds. They're doing other styles of wrestling. Freestyle, I think that really helps us in certain ways because wrestling so much on the mat, putting people in cradles, some of the things that our guys have been able to develop through the freestyle that some of these teams have never seen before.
Folk style.
Yeah. But I mean, then it transfers over to freestyle because we're using folk style moves in freestyle. So that's something that I've learned, and I'm old. So if I can learn it, I think people should understand we may not be the best in the world at this sport, Greco, but we're very, very talented, and we do have a really young team this year. So anything that they do is going to build on what the future is going to be for USA Wrestling and Greco team.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, and we won't dwell on it, but the superstars of men's college wrestling go to freestyle. Like you see guys that make the Greco team that weren't Division I All-Americans. That's actually fairly common. Like Thomas Gilman not being a national champion and making the men's freestyle team and then being a medalist and a world champion is a rarity. So yep. It's the David Taylors, it's the Kyle Snyders, it's the Jaden Coxes, it's the Jordan Burroughs, it's the Gwizdowskis, it's the Gables, those guys of the world, Yanni, those kind of Zane, all those guys are multiple time NCAA champions. So we won't spend a lot of time on that, but USA Wrestling. Oh, one last thing before we go into it. Caden Gefeller is at Oklahoma State is on the roster. And I don't know about you, but it is difficult to keep track of how old all these guys are because of COVID years and redshirt years, and in some cases Olympic redshirt years. I know G graduated in 17 because he's the same age as Fix, and Fix wrestled in the 2017 Border Brawl. It's the only reason, I know that off the top of my head because they're buddies. Mm-hmm. So, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22 would have been 5 years. That's 4 years plus a red shirt, but you get a COVID year, so he has a 6th year. So it'll be interesting to see what Oklahoma State does because they got Voinovich and they've got Sheets. And, they're trying to I know they have to be figuring out what to do with that lineup, but it'd be interesting because it's Mastro, Fix, Carter Young, either G or Voinovich, either G or Sheets. I'm not sure what they're going to do, or maybe a Jordan Williams or one of those guys, start them right away, depending on Sheets' health. 65, I think, is kind of a question mark. I think they want to get Whitlake down, ideally, for their lineup, but, I heard he's huge. 74 is Plot. 84 would be Whitlake or Kyle Haas, who is Tyler Caldwell's little brother. And then 97, Cerber's coming down. And then heavyweight, I think, is Doucette. I think they're actually the rumor mill. Nothing substantiated was Christian Carroll might be changing his mind. He first committed to Illinois, then committed to Penn, but and they're really good at obviously getting guys that were 97 pounders and turn them into heavyweights. The Oklahoma State bulk job came from that process. So
Derek White was a 97 pounder, right?
Yeah, Derek White was like 120 pounder at some point in high school, yeah. Because there's pictures of him at Oklahoma Wrestling Academy as a lightweight dude, back in the day. Obviously everybody, you're not born at 200 pounds, but some kids are like Tom Bradley was a 220 pounder as a high school freshman, and other kids weren't, so like the Tommy Rollins of the world. So one folk style note, but we'll talk a ton about Worlds this week, a ton about Worlds next week. It's important to understand the schedule because next week we'll be in the middle of Worlds. And then the week after that, we'll talk about men's freestyle and then probably get into college, because that'll be middle to late September and you'll have 5-6 weeks and give us enough time to touch on maybe 1 or 2 weight classes a week, the team race, make our picks that are guaranteed to be wrong, 5 months in advance, those kind of things. So
don't forget, David, tomorrow is Who's Number One on the 9th. So that's tomorrow. So some great high school matchups. The nice thing I like about that is that they let freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors wrestle in it. So you're actually getting some of the best kids in the country. Doesn't matter what grade you're in. They're gonna meet in the middle of the mat. So that'll be fun too.
Yeah, and you know what? I should give a shout out to Who's Number One. If for no other reason, it helped us with Border Brawl because in Missouri, for years they tried to tell us you can only have seniors, and I'm like, the whole saying like, well, this is how we've always done it, and you know how I feel about like that. That's like the worst sentence in the world. Like, look, people used to use shovels instead of tractors, things evolve, right? There's a bunch of things in the world that are better now. And somebody said to me out of the blue, like 5 years ago, they're like, well, Who's Number One is getting these kids. And, I didn't have a relationship with Flo at the time. If anything, I was opposite of them because I was with track. And, back then, they were, fire and ice. But following that logic, like instead of saying why, can we do this? It's like, why can't we do this? Like kids are already doing this, right? Like it's outside of the season. They do theirs in the fall. We were doing ours in the spring, but it's outside of October to end of February, beginning of March, when everybody's high school season ends. So, super helpful, and with the underclassmen part of it specifically, because, like when Fix wrestled Suriano was the one that 20, however many minute, 30 something minute match it was, that was something that even if you were a casual wrestling fan and didn't follow high school wrestling a lot, you're like, okay, like that was pretty insane. And I think it was like a 1-1 match. It wasn't like 6-6, but no overtime. And, they were just ripping and running and probably 14 half takedowns in there. So, yeah, great point. So people can watch that on Flow. Obviously, tomorrow we're recording this on Thursday. So if Gary gets us up tomorrow, which may be difficult with him being at Worlds, but on Friday, like you said, 9/9, Who's Number One is on. So, anyway, so USA Wrestling. Oh, one last thing, and we can get into this, but we finally found how you keep team score at the Worlds. Okay, so
for all you math people out there, this is very simple. Very simple. You'll understand it right off the get-go. Right, Dave?
It's actually more simple than the NCAA system.
All right.
We're just used to the NCAA system, to be fair. Okay. So the NCAA system is like 16, 12, 10, 9, whatever, but it becomes 20, 16, 13 and a half, 12 and a half, et cetera, because of the guaranteed advancement points, which like the girlfriend wife explanation is more complicated. Okay. And those numbers are never right because they don't include bonus points. So like when you see the preseason college rankings, a Carter Starachi is worth 20 points to Penn State because he's ranked 1 and the first place guy at the weight gets 20 points. But that doesn't include bonus, and almost every guy who's ranked number 1 is probably going to get a bonus match or 2 in the round of 32 in the round of 16. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with what they're worth. First place is 25. Second place is 20. Third place is worth 15, but there's 2 of those because the third place guys or women don't wrestle each other. Fifth place is worth 10. Again, the 2 losers of the backside semis or the repechage last match automatically get 5th. That's worth 10. And then 7, 8, 9, 10 is worth 8, 6, 4, 2. And those are figured out based on advancement points, et cetera. Probably the guys, the athletes that lost to get into the 5th place match are both, they figure out, okay, you had more points than me, so you're 7th, I'm 8th, et cetera. Okay. I know that this, like, the year I did the Worlds, Pat Downey was on the team and he had lost, but he had scored enough points to end up being like 9th or 10th. And that was enough points to help USA be 2nd, I think, instead of 3rd that year, or 3rd instead of 4th, something like that, which is critical. So a couple things to understand here. The margin of victory is irrelevant. Okay, so if you pin everybody and I win every match 1-1 on criteria, we both score 25 points.
Yep.
The second thing is this: there's no team scoring as you go, like until you make the semis. So once you make the semis, you're guaranteed 5th place points. Because if you lost, in order to get pulled through, your opponent has to make the finals. Well, clearly, if you lost in the semis, your opponent made the finals. You are also now sitting in the last match to wrestle for 3rd, because the way it works is, like, if you lost in the round of 64, let's say we're in the same weight class as David Taylor, and you lost 1st round to him and I lost 2nd round to him, you and me wrestle. Then the winner of that wrestles like Grant, who lost in the 3rd round to him, and et cetera. So if the person that lost in the semis to him, if it's Miles Amin, he only has to wrestle 1 match to take 3rd, so he's guaranteed 5th. So until those athletes hit the semis, there's no points. Once those semi matches hit, technically all 4 of those athletes get 10 points. Okay. Then the 2 winners, when they make the finals, get 10 more, because they're both guaranteed 2nd place, which is 20. And then the finals are worth a marginal 5, 25 versus 20. And the 2 backside matches for 3rds are worth a marginal 5, because you go from 10 to 15.
Sure.
So what's the only way to really calculate this sort of as you go is, and you see this in the guys that do this, like a John Kozak, who's very good at this for Flow Wrestling, and I actually DM'd him a couple years ago. They talk about the maximum points still alive. So, for example, when the tournament starts, every team can score 250 if all 10 of their athletes won. Okay. So as somebody gets knocked out, that number obviously gets chipped away. So it is a little more, I would say it's more difficult for us to follow because we're not used to it, right? Like, we follow this team race maybe 3-4 times a year, right? Yep. And also, and a big part of this too is hardly anybody gambles on this stuff. Like, I would think there'd be less people excited about USA winning the Worlds than there were, like, when Iowa won the NCAAs or Penn State, like, because just the fervor for it, like, I remember when Iowa won the NCAAs and it was in St. Louis, like, Nike had the official gear up 12 minutes after the match was clinched. And there was people when I was walking out to lunch that were buying it, so this is a real thing. So important to understand that part. So if we get time today, we can kind of do some calculations, but probably we'll get into that more next week. We'll be in the middle of women's freestyle, I believe, when we record next week. And then we can talk about where the women's team is. And then
actually, I think their first set of the men's freestyle will have started by the time we start our podcast.
Which would then mean the last day of women's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Later on that day, the finals will be for the women's. The men will have already been wrestling toward the semis. That group of 3 or 4 guys. I don't know how many they do on day one.
Let's walk through that real quick. So, and my guy Mike Smith put this up on Twitter. Day 1, 4 Greco weights. Day 2, 4 Greco weights. Day 3, 2 Greco weights, 2 women's weights. Day 4, the next 4 women's. Day 5, the next 4 women's. Day 6, 4 men's, 7 3 men's, 8 3 men's. But it's not that clear. Like on day 2, you have the medal matches from day 1, along with the new 4 weight classes. So there's always overlap. The only day there's not overlap is the last day. So just to kind of understand that. Okay. So 25, 20, 15, 15, 10, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Let me see if I can share screen here. Okay. So let's start by saying there are almost every reputable wrestling source is putting out stuff, previews of the world. So your usual suspects, the Flows, the Intermats, the Rockfins, the Open Mats, etc. Win Magazine. So there's multiple places. Obviously, we're USA Wrestling. Those guys and girls do a great job, but we're going to just use this one. But you can get it just like fantasy football. There's multiple sources. So this is the official media guide, which you can actually download, print, whatever, if you're old school, or just pull up. It's on themat.com. So here's, cover page, table of contents. So here's the actual schedule for people to understand this. This is exactly what we talked about here, Mark. So people can check this out. So when we record on Thursday, men's freestyle will have just started and the women's freestyle will be concluding. So
good picture of Gary in there.
Yeah, Gary and Taylor. So you can see the update to the rosters here with Sammy Jones and Spencer Woods. So Herb and Ike are the assigned coaches, and then you can see all the specific coaches. So Mango, B6, Zach, ET are some of the names you'd see on the Greco side that you'd recognize. Chris Bono's obviously there with Braxton Amos. So then there's the crew. So here's all the previews, weight classes, explaining who's beating who and all that sort of stuff. So all the way through all the different weight classes. Then the expected field, which this is like a super fun thing to try to have to memorize all these names when you're going through this, doing the announcing. But this is very cool because this is something you probably pay 10 or 20 bucks for, if you're at the event, and you can print this. And especially if you're traveling to the event, this would be something to have either on your phone or pulled up or something like that. So here's the Greco seeds. As you can see there, they've highlighted Nowry. He's the 4. We talked about this last week. So, and here's everybody's information, profiles, 2 at a time. So let's talk about these guys for a minute. Benji Peak and Kamal Bey, probably 2 of the most exciting guys we have. And if you look at how old they are, 22 and 24 years old. Peak's not ranked at all. Kamal's 88. I find it hard to believe there's 87 people in the world better at Greco-Roman at Kamal's weight class than Kamal. But these are 2 guys, if people don't know a lot about Greco, they should keep an eye on, right, Mark? Because these guys really let it rip.
Yeah, Benji really impressed me at the trials. And he's young for this. He hasn't been doing it that long, and he really went through that. I think everybody was kind of surprised how well he wrestled. So he's fun to watch, and he lets it fly. He doesn't care. He just goes after everything. So that's fun to watch. Yeah, and Kamal's been around a long time, David. Even when he was in his 16s, he was phenomenal at Greco with some of the throws and stuff he's able to do. I know he did a clinic at Beat the Streets in Chicago for you, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? So
they did a demonstration, him and Kendrick Sanders, where they were, it was awesome.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. He's an Oak Park River Forest guy. So when you say he did it for Mike Powell, I just happened to be announcing it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. I don't want to, that me and Kamal are cool, but we're not cool like Kamal and Mike Powell are. So I don't want to take any credit like that. Peak beat Pat Smith to make the team. So that's a major accomplishment. So Spencer Woods, one of our subs, Alan Rivera, or I'm sorry, Alan Vera, excuse me. And then Braxton Amos subbing in, and Colton Schultz. So another guy who's young, 21 years old, but a ton of experience on the Greco side. You can see here like U17, U20, U20 Olympic trials, blah, 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 blah. So, so a lot of things and they even put these guys' Twitters and Instagram handles. So if you want to start following these people, it's very, very cool to be able to do that. Women's freestyle team, there's Tamira. Here's the roster, Steiner, Kriebel. So, and this is interesting. They even listed the training partners, which is very cool, personal coaches. So Clarissa Chun is Jakara's coach, which is cool. Lee Pritz is going with Kayla, so that's awesome. So Carrie Moore, shout out to Carrie. She's a St. Louis person married to Jason Moore, so she's one of the medical staff people. So, and then the same thing here, like the thing is we just have people that have done better, so it's probably more exciting for people to follow this. But if you look through the seeds, which I think is probably, so we can do this. America, if they wrestle to their seeds, would have 25, then 7th would be Worth, 8, Jakara would be 15, Helen would be 20, then unseeded, then Kayla would be 15, Belty would be Worth 6, Mensa Stock would be worth 20, so 20, 40, 60, 70, 80, 90, 109. So if you compare that and you look at Japan, Japan's got 20, 25, that's 45. Just going to see a pick out real quick. 65. I mean, on paper, it's pretty close, but a lot of the Japanese wrestlers just haven't wrestled, so they're not even seeded. So it'd be interesting to see. But America may have the most seed points at women's freestyle, which is super exciting. And they've got, obviously with Adeline out, they've got some new blood in the lineup. Velty beat Forrest Molinari. So, these are stories. This is Don Parrish's first world team. Hildebrandt's obviously a veteran. Jakara's a veteran. Helen's, obviously like legend status. Miracle, we talked about her a couple of weeks ago, winning the 2 out of 3. So, I mean, this is a team with a lot of tenure. So, then you see these people's profiles. So, like Hildebrandt's ranked 1, Parrish is ranked 12, but got the 7 seed. Jakara ranked 8, 4 seed. Helen 1-1. Nettie isn't. She's ranked 31st. So I mean that's something there. Kayla's 4 and 3.
I think she's seeded 8th, right, David?
Yes. Yes.
So,
but they don't have that listed here, but she's ranked 31st. So yeah, it might be a tough hill for her to climb. This is just important for people that kind of want to know more than just the absolute just headlines. So, Velty's ranked 18th, seeded 8. But again, if you say, well, where would Forrest have been ranked? Like, okay, and she beat her, which we'll talk about with men's freestyle because most people know that better. But Mensa Stock 2-1. And then super young up here at the top, 18 and 22 years old. Allure's been a just absolute hammer at age group stuff, and her making a senior world team. She may come out of the gates firing, but even if she doesn't, she's going to be a superstar for years to come. So, this is a great chance for her. So it's interesting. Like she's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, which is pretty awesome. She's probably good at scrambling. So not a bad picture of Kyle Dake there. So men's freestyle team, Bill Zadig, Joe Russell, training partners. Some pretty awesome names in here. Personal coaches. So Penn State's whole staff is going over there. Cody, Kale, Casey, and Varner. So that's pretty awesome. So Steiner, you can see here the new coach at the Gopher RTC. will be coaching Zilmer. Same crew. And then, like they point out things like, hey, Cruz and Misick are in here, et cetera. So you can see the expected field. I mean, these are just deep, deep brackets. Like most of them are at least 32s. So which is a lot bigger than the Olympic brackets.
Yeah.
So GT said this a while back that he thought America was going to win this year. So if we do this, we have time. Gilman's 25. Then we have a 0. Then we have a 0. I don't know why there's not an 8 seed at 70. That's interesting. So Zane is the 6th, which is or 10. Dake is 25. JB is 25. Taylor's 20. Jaden is 15. And then Snyder's 25. And then nothing at heavyweight. So 25, 25, 25, 25 is 100, 120, 130, 145. So the good news is that's a ton of points. The bad news is there's 4 weights where we can only do worse than what we're ranked as a country.
Yep.
So Iran's got 15, and then nothing, and then nothing, and then 10, and then 10, and then 20, and then 25, and then 25, and then nothing, and then 15. So 25, 50, 70, 100, 120. So on paper, America's favored. So you got Gilman and Gross. Like, see, Gross is ranked 54th, where Dayton would have been ranked top 5. I'm almost positive. So that you can look at it the way you want. You can say, well,
he might have been number 2 because he took 2nd in the worlds last year, right?
Yeah, but it's these points only count. Those tournaments count, but not for everything. Okay. So, but yeah, so Yanni's ranked 32, Zane's ranked 14th, Dake and JB both ranked 1 and seeded 1. Taylor 2 and 2, Jaden 4 and 3, Snyder 1 and 1, and then Zilmer 41st. So, and then they go through the coaches and everything else. So, this is pretty awesome. Excuse me. This is a pretty awesome program that USA Wrestling's put together. I think it's like your sort of must-have travel guide. Yep. Something like, again, if you're old school, like my dad would print that off, but whether you have it loaded on your tablet, like on your iPad when you're in the man cave, Mark, or, you literally have the hard copies. It's interesting to see for people. Again, we've talked about this a couple times, but we have to give UWW credit. It used to be a completely blind draw. Then it was, they separated the top 2, then the top 4. Now it's top 8. So they're trying to separate things as far as possible and also sort of try to show transparency and avoid like somebody goofy making the finals. The second thing is that they used to have unbalanced brackets. And what we mean by that is, like, in America, if there's 9, like if there's 12 athletes in a bracket, there's going to be 6 in the top, 6 in the bottom. And it's going to be a 3, a 3, a 3, and a 3. Like the buys will be separated. Yep. And they didn't used to do that. They used to put all the top match, all of them in one half, and then all the buys in the other half. And so it was a big advantage to being down there because there's no advancement points. You just want to wrestle the least amount of matches possible. So they've also avoided that. And so, and I don't know if they've Americanized it or whatever, but it's just, I think for our standpoint, it seems more equitable. Okay. I think the argument against that is, well, there's so much less results, right? Like one of the things that we like about college wrestling when we did the rankings were a lot of teams wrestle a lot of other teams, so it's a lot easier to figure out,
Yep.
Even like in junior college, it was pretty easy. The seeding meeting at the regionals or the national qualifier was pretty easy. The national one was very difficult because junior college teams have different budgets. And so like a Nassau might not ever see a Clackamas kind of thing, as an example, to pick two good programs that are on opposite sides of the country. So anyway, let's just say this on the women's freestyle and Greco side, who are you most excited to watch? Because we'll have time to talk about the men's freestyle next week.
Oh, I don't know. I'm interested in what we do at 57 kilos. We got the number 4 seed there.
55. It's a different
55, I'm sorry, 57 is freestyle. 55. So I'm interested to see how we do there. I think we have a real shot at wrestling for a bronze, I'm hoping. And then obviously Schultz at heavyweight. He's won everything there is to win in the age group brackets, David. So we're going to find out if he's ready for, the senior level. I know this is his second senior team he's made, but he's getting better and better every year. I did not expect him to get second at nationals last year. He surprised me. So, he's come a long ways. So give him kudos. Women, we're stacked. We're really good, So nobody in particular. I'm going to enjoy watching the whole team. So.
Yeah, Schultz and Amos are interesting to me because they're still in college, and how you and me started doing rankings and being on the air was really tied to college. So it's impossible for me to get away from those roots. Again, I think a shout out to Grant Turner. He's done a great job of educating us on not just the United States teams, which I feel like at least on men's freestyle, we have a fairly good grasp of, but, really helping us with deep dives on the international field. So those two in Greco, obviously I have a relationship with Kamal, so super excited for him to be able to come back and wrestle. On women's freestyle, sometimes there's just people when you talk to them, you like their energy. And I got a chance to interview Dom Parrish, and she just seems like just a genuinely happy human being. And I think she's overcome, like some, she was never the main person. Like if she was a male, you say she was never the man, but she's in a room with a bunch of alphas, with Forrest and Helen, etc. But she's made the world team. And I think if she can do better than 7th, that's beating Japan is an uphill climb, but she's one of those people that couldn't do better than she's ranked. And it wouldn't be that surprising. I mean, the hard part is it's her first world team, but she lets it rip. I gotta say that she doesn't wrestle very conservatively, and I mean that as a huge compliment. Like, she doesn't try to win matches 1-1. And I follow Sunkissed on social, and you see a lot of these spar videos are doing, and she's got super clean technique. So obviously watching Helen add to her legacy, Mensa Stock, Hildebrandt, those are the hammers, obviously.
I feel the same way about Kayla Miracle. I mean, we got to meet. I met her for the first time when we were out at nationals, and just sitting down talking to her. She's such a nice person. She's smiling. She's laughing the whole time. Even goofing around with her teammates, getting warmed up. She was having fun. So it'd be great to see her do real well here too.
Yeah. And I think everybody knows Pritz and I are buddies. Like, I talked to Pritz after she made the team and was able to relay that conversation with his permission. And so, Mark Perry and Lee and Zeke and all those guys out there are doing a great job. Frank, ET, with all the Sunkissed kids, literally, but, Perry is the main, obviously the head the Sunkissed coach, and they've built probably the best. I mean, we go back to when a bunch of those young ladies transferred from, Iowa down there. So the proof is in the pudding. They've continued to do well. So when we talk on the air next week, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be through Greco, and we'll be almost through freestyle or women's freestyle. So Go USA. Shout out to Gary for getting us on the air this week because I know he'll be multitasking. So for GT, who's not with us but here in spirit and in hopefully intellectual capacity, helping us smarter. And for Mark, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll speak to y'all next week.